So this is exactly what I do to wake up at 3:30 to 4 every single morning. And then how you can utilize these strategies to wake up early as well. Hi everybody, if you don't know who I am, my name is Joaquin Rebello. I got a perfect 45 in the IB diploma in high school, and I'm a current UPenn Wharton dual degree engineering student at the M&T program. Now look, I'm not saying that you should wake up as early as 3:30 to 4. And sometimes myself, I wake up at around like 5, maybe even late as 6, but I'm definitely awake by the time 6 hits. That way I can get started with my day. And the entire reason why I've been structuring my day in this way is because there's just so many hidden benefits that I never realized before I started doing this consistently, all right? And the first of which is this concept of momentum. Again, you probably never heard of this concept anywhere on YouTube because it's something I didn't hear, but it's something I discovered by just waking up early. And essentially what I found is that humans have this cycle of, I don't want to call it motivation, but this cycle of immense desire to achieve a goal. And sometimes we feel that, sometimes we feel like this invisible push that we're getting everything right, that our life is so good, we just feel so, it's like the bloomer, right? Bloomer Bjorn. We feel so elevated up. And because of that, we're just a productivity machine. We're getting so much done. I always wondered, how can I tap better into that, right? Into this better positive feedback loop, as I like to call it. Okay, that's what I like to call momentum, which essentially something good happens in your life, and then that inspires you to continue to do more things because you see results. And then you continue to do more things, so more good things happen, and then that inspires you to continue to do results. So you basically have this upward spiral of success. And one of the reasons why this is so effective is because one of the biggest determiners of happiness is seeing progress towards our goal, all right? And I'm not big into the entire happiness mantra. There was a period of time in my life in like 2017 where I was just trying to maximize my happiness at every single corner. I found though that when you focus on trying to do the best you can, on trying to truly achieve your goals, it's not the same feeling you get from, let's say, a pleasurable, like eating some ice cream, like that feeling of pleasure. But what you do get is a deep down satisfaction for the work that you're working on, right? You feel like you have that higher purpose. One of the biggest issues I see with high school students is that they're lacking that. Every single time they go to school and they try to do work, or every single time they get an assignment or they try to do homework, there's no purpose behind it. There's no vigor. There's no necessity that pushes them past into the betterment of themselves. Like that does not exist in our current education system. And I think that's a huge mistake because we're missing out on a lot of untapped human potential. But long story short, what I found is that everybody needs to identify what are those momentum triggers in their own life, right? What are the events that start that cycle? So what you can do right now actually is you can reflect back to that time in your life where you had this intense desire, this intense motivation. You felt unstoppable. You felt like you could continue to achieve your goals. You just felt so high on life because you were so happy with the stuff you were achieving that you just didn't want to stop to achieve. Now ask yourself, once you thought of when that was in your own life, ask yourself what started that upward spiral? Like what was the initiation? For most students that I've worked with, it was typically some type of achievement. Okay, either they got a good score in their math test and they're like, wow, this is possible. I can now continue to do well. Maybe I got a level 7 or a 96%, whatever the case may be. Something else is they had a very impactful conversation, right? Another thing is they read an impactful book. Okay, this actually is what got me into this entire motivation spiral. I read the book was called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy when I was 11 years old. And that created this upward spiral where I started to achieve some of these habits. I started to see the results in my own life. And I'm like, wow, I love this increase in productivity. I love all the results I'm getting, and it just shot me to this upward spiral for my entire 11-year-old life. So how does this relate to waking up early? What I found is that when you wake up early, at least this happened in my own life, that is almost always, in fact, I've never had it that it's not the case, almost always the positive trigger that continues that upwards positive spiral. And the reason why I think this is so profound is that when you wake up early, not only do you have the actual achievement of waking up early, which the majority of people do not do, so automatically you're separating yourself from the crowd simply by waking up earlier than most people. So it gives you this sense of achievement simply in that way. But I also found that since you have that chasm of time, we now have the opportunity to do good things, right? We have the opportunity to do positive things. And if you think of it from this perspective, realize that the majority of the human goodness in just society always happens in the morning. All the good ideas happen in the morning, all the revelations, all the epiphanies. The morning is seen as a period of rebirth, right? Rebirth onto the new day. Now, all the human evils, all the bad stuff, all the terrors, everything bad, all the monsters happen at nighttime. So by allowing myself to give that window of time that I typically would not spend doing anything else, right? Because I'd spend that sleeping. So I just have this empty bucket of time. I can now start to add good things into that. What I found as well with students that I work with is that a lot of students come with me with very ambitious habits. Okay, they're like, damn, I want to do this habit. I want to stay consistent with, let's say, my public speaking. I want to stay consistent with doing past paper questions, question bank questions. I want to stay consistent with all these different habits. And one of the biggest mistakes that myself included, I made this all the time, was that I would try to add in a good habit to a routine that was already full, right? That already had a lot of priorities, that was quote unquote busy. I do not like to use that term, but you can think of it as a busy routine, meaning you just have too many things going on. So what ends up happening is the student comes, they're like, I want to do X, Y, and Z. They try to add into the routine, but the routine is already filled with tons of different priorities. They have all these bad habits. They have all this stuff that they are doing instead of the good habit. So when they try to add in the good habit, it's like trying to squeeze it in to this hole that is too small, does not fit. So because of that, they're unable to stay consistent with that habit. So one of the biggest things I found is you want to focus on removing, not on adding. Okay, you want to focus on removing the things that are less productive, that are less valuable. You want to remove those first so you can then start to add in the things that add in value. Okay, you want to do less first. That way you have more time to allocate towards the most valuable priority. And then what I found is that when you wake up early, you're basically automatically cutting away the period of time at the end of the day that you otherwise would spend on bad habits, on useless screwing around, on not that productive study sessions. You cut away all the less valuable tasks you could be spending your time on and allocating it to the front. So basically it gives you this chasm of time for you to put all the good stuff in. And I think that's why just every single time I've seen this huge growth in my own life. Every single time it happens because either I wake up early and I have that time, or I consume some type of book, some type of course, some type of advice from a mentor that just brings me into that necessity to continue to improve. So the question then becomes, how exactly do I wake up at 3:30 to 4? Well, first of all, I go to bed at around like 7:30 to 8. Okay, latest is 8:30. All right, and the days I go to bed at 8:30, I typically wake up at around 5. So I don't recommend that. Okay, so number one, I go to bed at around 7:30 to 8. Number two, I always sleep, or I do my best to sleep minimum of 8 hours, right? So you do not want to be cutting away your sleep time. And then number three, what I do is I always set a game over time on my calendar. And then number three is I set a game over time on my cell phone. So right now at 7:30, I have an alarm that goes off that reminds me that the game is over. And by game over, I mean that you can no longer play. Similar to how if a football match, if a soccer match ended, can't score any more goals after the game is over. Okay, there's no more, nothing. The game is over. It's done. If you schedule your day such that you know that at 7:30 p.m. you can no longer do any work, okay, there's no more work that can be done after 7:30. Essentially, that forces you to utilize those procrastination flow tendencies that most students attribute their success towards, right? If you've ever realized that you're most productive right before a deadline, right before you're about to submit it, that's because your mind is primed for survival, right? Your mind wants to survive. Hence, when there's an imminent threat, such as a due assignment, you get put into this fight or flight mode, and you're basically forced into a state of unbreakable focus, unbreakable flow. So you can either leverage that for 2 a.m. in the morning, or you can leverage it and make a deadline saying that, hey, by 7:30, I need to have this done, or else it's game over. All right. And you can actually add a physical timer, meaning that your computer shuts off at 7:30. So you can no longer do work after 7:30. That's number one. Or number two, you can just on your phone or whatnot, have one of your siblings, which is what I did, or one of your friends put in the password such that your phone shuts down. Like screen time at 7:30, there's nothing you can do. All right. And then I don't have any alarm clock to wake me up, so I just wake up naturally. This is such an epiphany for myself because I would always add an alarm clock, and then I felt like I was trying to sleep before that period of time. Just added so much stress. And even if I do get 10 to 15 minutes of less sleep, what I found is that it starts off the day kind of foggy, kind of tired, kind of exhausted, kind of like I'd rather just wake up naturally, and then as soon as I'm conscious, what I tend to do is I set an alarm for 10 minutes, meaning I get up and I'm doing everything I possibly can to get to work as fast as possible in those 10 minutes. So I get up, I change, I brush my teeth, and then I get down to work as fast as possible in those 10 minutes. And I also found that that sets the cadence for the day. When you wake up is what I like to call one of those key decisions, meaning that the choice you make right when you wake up can in many ways determine the next set of choices that are going to be made. So if you wake up slow, meaning you're just rolling around in bed for 30 minutes, or you check your phone, God forbid, in your bed, you're basically conditioning your brain to start slow, to start distracted. And I think that's why so many students just struggle so much in the morning, is because the morning feels like a hassle. Don't make it feel that way. Make it feel like something fun. Make it feel like a competition. I love scheduling my day like a competition. If you ask what's one of the biggest hacks that I've gone into getting a perfect score on the 45 and then getting into university at this super prestigious program, it's because I gamified the entire process. I explain this in a lot of my other videos, but I always carry around the stopwatch to really just track and gamify the amount of time I spend working on my most important metrics, right? If you think of yourself as a baseball players know all of their metrics, and they're doing everything they possibly can to optimize each one of those metrics, okay? And it's not only baseball players, it's also professional athletes. It's basically professionals in any field of discipline. So if you can think of that from your perspective, right? You're a professional student. How can you maximize the metrics that matter the most? And then you go about gamifying this, meaning you track these metrics, you compete against other people. That's how you're going to get the most out of this. So I found that when I wake up, the first thing I do is I track the amount of time I take. I want to get that under 10 minutes. Then I sit down, I start the flow timer. I want to reach states of flow as fast as possible and then maintain that for 45 to an hour and a half. Okay, typically I go an hour and a half, maybe a little bit over, sometimes 2 hours or an hour and 45 minutes. And I track it with the stopwatch right here. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you want to spend the first thing you do in the morning as your, what I call your big rock, which is your most valuable and most important priority. And I think I mentioned this in another video, so you can go check that one out. But essentially, long story short, you want to do your most important thing when you first wake up, right? Brian Tracy calls this eating the frog. All right, so that's the second point on how you do this. And then the third point is what's stopping, okay? What's stopping you? Like, why are you not able to wake up in the morning? A lot of students come up to me and they're like, oh, my family. I don't think that's a valid excuse, simply because even if your family eats at, let's say, 8 p.m., okay, which is, I think, pretty late for family to eat. My family, we ate at around like 6:30, 7. But let's say your family eats at 8 p.m. or maybe 9 p.m., whatever the case may be, you can still go to bed at 10. Yeah, you can still go to bed at 10. Realistically, you can still go to bed at 10. If you go to bed at 10, you can wake up at around 6:30 easy. And most students don't head off to school until like 8:30, 8:45. So that gives you literally like an hour and a half where you can allocate towards working on your most important priority in the morning. And then the second thing I hear about students all the time is the excuse of, oh, won't I be missing out? All right, let me just briefly address this. Yes and no. This was a big thing that I struggled with all the time. All right, especially in my first year of the university, I would wake up at around like 4, to the amusement of my roommate, actually, Andre. It's kind of funny because I'd wake up at around 4 and then I'd get out of bed, and then as soon as I got out, Andre would walk into our dorm and he's like, yeah, man, I'm heading to sleep right now after doing some work. So you are going to miss out on certain parts. That's true. The best way I can explain this to you is that you can think of your academic life as a set of seasons, meaning that there are certain seasons where you're trying to be as productive as possible. And then there's certain seasons where you're really trying to enjoy your high school experience. Understand that you need to identify what season you're in right now. All right. If your IAs are due, if university application is due in a month, you're not in the season of trying to party. Okay. You're in the season of trying to get as much work done as humanly possible. So this is when you double down exactly on that. And then let's say around the time when you graduate, 100%, you're in the season of having fun with your friends. When you're in the season of graduating, do not wake up at 4 a.m. if you want to make the most out of that. And then one final thing I will say that has just completely changed my life when I learned this is that you're young. I'm also young. The thing is that when we're young, we have a very distinct advantage. And that advantage is time. Because we're young, we still have a lot of years left to live. We still have our entire lifetime. Which means what? Which means that I can make a very positive choice right now. I can build a good habit. I can start a business. Whatever the case may be, I can make a very good choice right now. And that good choice will have a positive impact for the rest of my life. And here's the thing, that if I was to make the exact same positive choice at, let's say, 15 years old, that positive choice would have so much of a larger impact on my life than if I was to make the exact same choice when I was 30 or 45 or 60. Meaning that the earlier in life you make a positive choice, the more you're going to be able to reap the rewards and get the compounding benefit of that choice. And you need to understand that if you made a positive choice when you're 15 compared to when you're 30, the difference in results by the time you're 45 is not 2x, right? It's not 2 times better, okay? It's many, many, many times more than that, right? It's 10x, 100x, even 1000x, simply because making a positive choice today can, in many cases, open up doors that you didn't think were possible. And that happens at a compounding rate, right? If you ever looked at the butterfly effect, you know that any choice can completely change the trajectory of your life, no matter how small. So understand that, make a small positive choice today, build a small habit, and you have huge potential. You have huge choice power towards becoming a better version of yourself. And to this day in my own life, I still realize some of the choices I made when I was 11, 12 years old, right? Reading the book of The Compound Effect, that was one of the best choices I've ever made. And the crazy part is I still feel the choice. I still feel the impact of that decision to this day. The habits I've implemented, the frame of mind that I view the world. I'm slowly starting to realize that people really don't view the world the same way I do. I view the world from this very optimistic, we can improve society, we can all build each other up. I view the world from that perspective, right? And it's not naive because I know all the bad stuff as well, and I know all this dark psychology and the rest of it. I understand the dark side of human nature, right? And I do martial arts and the rest of it, but I view the world from this positive perspective of how I can improve. And that perspective change happened when I was earlier on, right? When I was 11, 12 years old, the only content I consumed was from uplifting, optimistic, inspirational people, goal setting, productivity, really just self-improvement in general. I don't really like to use that term, but really just improving yourself, trying to become better. I did all of that, and that has distilled itself into my own life, which then transcended into my academics and into achieving the goals that I've achieved so far. So the point I'm trying to make is that right now, I would argue when you're young is the time to make good choices. So the point I'm trying to make here is that you can spend the time you're spending right now focused on improving yourself. You will reap those rewards for the rest of your life at a compounding rate, which is why I believe it's worth it to go all in the younger you are. So ultimately, that's my perspective on waking up early. I wake up at around 3:30, 4, maybe sometimes 5, at around that time. Really depends when I wake up. I don't set an alarm clock. I just wake up when my body wakes up. Sometimes that's 3:30, sometimes that's 4, sometimes that's 5. Long story short, I found that waking up early doesn't, and again, don't have the impression that you got to wake up as early as I do. Okay, do not. If you can wake up even at 6, that will start that positive momentum in your own life that will propel you towards falling into that positive feedback cycle and then ultimately becoming that high achieving student. All right. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. If you have any questions at all, please leave it in the community down below. All right. If you're unaware, we just started our Grizzly Elite Discord community. So you can connect with other high achieving students. You can connect with other Ivy League students. Ask any questions you have to myself. We also have a lot of prizes. We gamify the entire school system. That way you can basically just play school as a game and then compete against other people. So please join it down below. You're gonna find a lot of value in that. It's just fully stacked of value. So check that out. However, if you want to join, you will need to apply. And one of the application necessities is that you get at least a level 7 in one of your previous exams. So if you haven't gotten any level 7s in the past month, go all in, utilize these strategies, get a level 7, and then you can apply. All right, so I hope to see you there. If you have any questions at all, please leave them in the Discord community there, as well as just mention myself. And until next time, stay grizzly, everybody. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.